You think you know the people at the top until you catch them breaking down. When a single father making barely enough to survive stumbled upon his ruthless billionaire CEO weeping on her office floor, he expected to be fired. Instead, her next 5 words rewrote his entire destiny. The digital clock on the server room wall read 11:45 p.m. Anthony Miller rubbed his burning eyes, the blue light from his laptop screen reflecting off his tired face. For the past 3 years, Anthony's life had been a relentless cycle of exhaustion. By day, he was a mid-level IT infrastructure manager at Sterling Cross Technologies in downtown Chicago. By night, he was a single father desperately trying to keep his head above water. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, had been diagnosed with a rare auditory nerve condition. The specialized schooling and the ongoing payments for her advanced cochlear implants had drained Anthony's savings, his 401k, and any semblance of a personal life. He took every overtime shift, every weekend server maintenance task, just to chip away at the mountain of medical debt. That Friday night, a critical fiber optic relay had failed on the 50th floor, the executive suite. It was a level of the building Anthony rarely saw, a place of imported Italian marble, soundproof glass, and an aura of untouchable wealth. It was the domain of Olivia Sterling. Olivia was a 34-year-old billionaire, the sole heir to the Sterling fortune, and the CEO who had ruthlessly expanded the company's market share. The corporate gossip painted her as a machine, ice-cold, impeccably dressed in custom Tom Ford suits, and entirely devoid of human empathy. She was known to fire executives in the elevator and finalize multi-million-dollar acquisitions without blinking. To Anthony, she was just the signature at the bottom of his stagnant paychecks. Carrying his diagnostic tablet and a tangle of cables, Anthony stepped off the elevator onto the 50th floor. The lights were dimmed to a soft, ambient glow. The silence up here was heavy, insulated from the sirens and traffic of the Chicago streets below. He made his way down the long corridor toward the main network closet, which unfortunately shared a wall with the CEO's corner office. As Anthony approached, he stopped dead in his tracks. The heavy, frosted glass doors of Olivia Sterling's office were slightly ajar. A sliver of warm light spilled out onto the dark carpet, and from within, that light came a sound Anthony never expected to hear in this building. It was a sob. Not a delicate cinematic sniffle, but a raw, gut-wrenching, ugly sound of complete despair. Anthony froze. Every survival instinct told him to turn around, walk back to the elevator, and pretend the network could wait until Monday. You do not catch a predator in a moment of weakness and expect to walk away unbitten. But then came another sound, a sharp gasp for air, followed by the shattering of glass. His paternal instincts, honed by years of soothing a frightened child, overrode his corporate survival skills. He cautiously pushed the heavy glass door open. The corner office was a sprawling space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering Chicago skyline. At the center of the room, behind a massive mahogany desk, sat Olivia Sterling. But she wasn't in her chair. She was on the floor. Her usually flawless blonde hair was completely unraveled, hanging in damp strands around her face. Her sharp, tailored blazer was discarded on a nearby chair, and she was clutching a crumpled stack of legal documents to her chest. A shattered crystal tumbler lay in pieces near her bare feet, a puddle of amber liquid soaking into the priceless Persian rug. She was hyperventilating, her shoulders shaking violently. "Miss Sterling?" Anthony asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia snapped her head up. For a second, her eyes, red-rimmed, bloodshot, and wide with panic, locked onto his. The vulnerability in her gaze was so profound, it made Anthony feel like a trespasser in her soul. Then, the billionaire returned. Like a steel trap snapping shut, her expression hardened. She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the broken glass, her jaw set tight. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, the expensive fabric of her silk blouse catching her tears. "What the hell are you doing in here?" she demanded, her voice thick but laced with familiar venom. "Security is supposed to clear this floor at 8. "The network relay, ma'am," Anthony stammered, holding up his tablet like a shield. There was a critical drop in the server. I had to physically reset the switch in the adjacent closet. I heard a crash. I wanted to make sure you were all right. Olivia stared at him, her chest still heaving slightly. She walked over to her desk, leaning heavily against the edge. "I am fine. You will leave. Now. And if I hear a whisper of this from anyone in your department, I will ensure you never work in this city again. Pack up your equipment." "Understood," Anthony said quickly. He took a step back, eager to escape. But as he turned toward the door, he noticed the legal document she had dropped on the floor. The bold header caught his eye. Emergency Board Petition. Declaration of Unfitness, Arthur Kensington. Anthony hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. Olivia noticed where he was looking. "Stop," she commanded. Anthony stopped. The silence in the office was deafening, save for the faint hum of the city wind against the thick glass. Olivia took a deep, shaky breath, closing her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, the anger was gone, replaced by a calculating, desperate intensity. She walked over to the mahogany doors, grabbed the handles and pulled them shut with a heavy click. She threw the deadbolt. "What is your name?" she asked, her tone entirely changed. It was quiet, analytical. "Anthony. Anthony Miller. IT Infrastructure." "Sit down, Mr. Miller," she said, pointing to one of the leather armchairs facing her desk. "Miss Sterling, I really should just go—" "I said sit." Anthony sat. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He was going to be fired. He mentally calculated how much he had left in his checking account. It wouldn't cover Lily's next tuition payment. Olivia walked to a side cabinet, pulled out a new tumbler, and poured a generous measure of scotch. She didn't drink it. She just held it, staring at Anthony with a penetrating gaze that made him deeply uncomfortable. "How is Lily's hearing progressing, Anthony?" Anthony's blood ran cold. The sheer shock of hearing his daughter's name from the lips of the untouchable billionaire CEO left him momentarily speechless. "Excuse me?" he managed to choke out. Olivia sat down in the leather chair opposite him, crossing her legs. "Lily. She's 7. She goes to the Brighton School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. You were late on tuition last month, and you owe Northwestern Memorial Hospital $42,000 for her bilateral cochlear implant adjustments." Anger flared in Anthony's chest, momentarily overriding his intimidation. "Have you been looking into my private life? Why? I'm a mid-level manager. I do my job. I go home. I look into the lives of everyone who works in this building," Olivia said coolly, taking a small sip of her scotch. "Information is currency, Mr. Miller. But in your case, I didn't pull your file just for routine screening. I pulled it 3 weeks ago because I was looking for a very specific type of person. And tonight, by walking through that door, you just proved the psych evaluation right." Anthony gripped the armrests of his chair. "I don't understand." Olivia stood up again, pacing the length of the office. The vulnerability he had seen earlier was completely masked, but the nervous energy remained. "My grandfather founded Sterling Cross," Olivia began, her voice echoing slightly in the large room. "When he died, he left the controlling 15% of the voting shares in a trust. I am the CEO, but I don't own those shares. I unlock them on my 35th birthday, which is in 3 weeks. Until then, the trust is governed by a strict, archaic morality clause. She stopped pacing and looked at the crumpled document on the floor. Arthur Kensington. She spat the name out like poison. My former mentor. My current chief operating officer. And until 6 months ago, my fiancé. Anthony blinked, trying to keep up. I didn't know you were engaged. Nobody did. It was an arrangement of power, not love. When I realized Arthur was quietly siphoning company assets into offshore shell corporations, I broke it off. But I couldn't fire him without exposing the financial rot to the SEC and crashing our stock. I've been building a quiet, airtight legal case to destroy him. Olivia let out a bitter laugh. But Arthur found out. He knows I'm about to serve him to the feds. So he struck first. He just filed an emergency petition with the board, backed by fabricated evidence, claiming I am mentally unstable, addicted to illicit substances, and embezzling funds. Because of the morality clause, if the board even suspects this is true, they can legally strip me of my CEO title and give control of the trust to Arthur on Monday morning. Anthony stared at her. Why are you telling me this? I fix servers. You need lawyers. My lawyers can't fix this in 48 hours, Olivia snapped, slamming her glass down on the desk. Arthur has bribed 3 key board members. They don't care about the truth. They care about optics. To the board, I am a ruthless, cold, isolated woman with no family ties. Arthur has painted a picture of an unhinged heiress, spiraling out of control. I cannot walk into that boardroom on Monday alone. She walked slowly toward Anthony, stopping just inches from his chair. I need an anchor, Anthony. I need something that instantly shatters Arthur's narrative. I need a shield of impenetrable, wholesome respectability. Anthony's heart pounded. He looked at the billionaire, piecing together the terrifying puzzle. You said you looked into my file 3 weeks ago. I instructed my private investigators to find an employee within the company who possesses an impeccable moral compass, Olivia said, her eyes locked on his. Someone with no criminal record, no sordid past, someone deeply grounded, a devoted, struggling single father whose only flaw is loving his disabled daughter too much to quit. Anthony stood up, feeling suffocated. You're out of your mind. I am desperate, Olivia corrected, her voice dropping to an intense whisper. If Arthur takes this company, he will dismantle it for parts. 10,000 people will lose their jobs. I will lose my family's legacy. I cannot let him win. So what do you want from me? Anthony asked, his voice trembling slightly. Olivia didn't blink. I want you to marry me. Tomorrow. The silence in the room returned, heavier and more suffocating than before. Anthony stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for the hidden camera to emerge. But Olivia's face was dead serious. A legal, binding marriage, Olivia continued, her tone entirely businesslike now. We will backdate a private, quiet relationship. When I walk into that boardroom on Monday, I will not be the isolated, spiraling woman Arthur claims I am. I will be a newlywed, a woman who quietly married a hard-working, salt-of-the-earth employee and took on the role of stepmother to his special needs daughter. The PR team will leak it flawlessly. The board, composed of conservative family men, will eat it up. It completely destroys Arthur's narrative of instability. You can't just buy a husband over the weekend, Anthony yelled, his shock turning into anger. This is insane. I have a daughter to protect. You think I'm going to drag Lily into a billionaire's corporate war? I'm leaving. He grabbed his tablet and headed for the locked door. $5 million, Olivia said. Anthony's hand stopped inches from the deadbolt. $5 million, deposited into an offshore account in your name by 9 a.m. tomorrow, Olivia said, her voice echoing across the room. I will also set up an irrevocable trust for Lily. Her medical bills? Erased. The $42,000 you owe? Gone. The best pediatric audiologists in the world flown to Chicago. A guaranteed spot at any university she chooses. You will never, ever have to look at a price tag again. Anthony slowly turned around. Olivia was standing by her desk, looking at him not as a CEO, but as a negotiator playing her final, most powerful card. The arrangement lasts exactly 1 year, Olivia stated. We live together in my penthouse to maintain appearances. We play the part in public. In private, we live completely separate lives. At the end of the year, we file for an amicable, quiet divorce. You keep the $5 million. Lily keeps her trust. You take your daughter, and you walk away. Anthony felt the room spinning. He thought of the stack of past due bills on his kitchen counter. He thought of Lily crying last week because her hearing aid batteries died, and he had to wait 2 days until payday to buy more. He thought of the hollow, sinking feeling in his gut every time he had to tell his little girl, no. $5 million. It wasn't just money. It was a wall of protection for his child. It was freedom. But he also looked at the woman standing before him. Underneath the billion-dollar armor, she was a woman backed into a corner by a treacherous ex-fiancé fighting for her life's work. She was dangerous, and the world she was inviting him into was filled with sharks like Arthur Kensington. Arthur, Anthony said slowly, if he's willing to fabricate evidence to steal $1 billion company, what is he going to do when a random IT guy ruins his plan? Olivia's eyes darkened. He will try to tear you apart. He will dig into your past. He will follow us. He will try to break you to prove this is a sham. It will not be easy, Anthony. I am buying your life for the next 365 days, and I expect you to perform under pressure. She walked over to him, holding out her hand. So, Mr. Miller, do you want to go back to the server room and worry about your daughter's medical debt for the rest of your life? Or do you want to save her and save my company in the process? Anthony looked at her manicured hand. The choice he was about to make would burn down the quiet, safe life he had built for his daughter. But the reward could give her the world. He reached out and shook her hand. The weekend blurred into a surreal montage of legal paperwork, non-disclosure agreements, and a sterile 10-minute ceremony at the Cook County Courthouse. Olivia wore a simple, tailored white suit. Anthony wore his only decent navy blazer. There were no flowers, no rings exchanged with trembling hands, just the scratch of a fountain pen signing away his anonymity. By Sunday evening, Anthony and Lily had been relocated by a discreet security team from their cramped 2-bedroom apartment to Olivia's sprawling, glass-walled penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. The 50th floor boardroom of Sterling Cross Technologies was a cavernous space paneled in dark oak. Seated around the massive polished table were the 12 members of the board, mostly older, conservative men who controlled the fate of the company's stock. At the head of the table stood Arthur Kensington. Arthur was 50, impeccably groomed, with silver hair and the kind of aggressive charisma that commanded a room. He was mid-speech, projecting a slide detailing Olivia's recent, erratic executive decisions, weaving a masterful tale of a woman crumbling under the weight of her inheritance. Gentlemen, it brings me no pleasure to say this, Arthur said, pressing a hand to his chest in feigned sorrow. Olivia is unwell. Her isolation has bred paranoia. She is entirely detached from the human element of this business, and frankly, from reality. For the sake of the shareholders, We must invoke the morality and fitness clause. The trust must be reassigned. Before the board chairman could respond, the heavy oak doors swung open. Olivia walked in, radiating absolute, chilling confidence. She wore a sharp charcoal dress, but it was what, or rather, who, was beside her that sucked the air out of the room? Anthony stepped in next to her, wearing a custom-fitted suit Olivia's stylist had procured overnight. He stood tall, his posture rigid but grounded. "I apologize for the interruption, gentlemen," Olivia said, her voice smooth and commanding. "But I felt my husband should be present for discussions regarding my personal stability." A collective gasp echoed through the boardroom. Arthur Kensington's smug expression dissolved into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. "Husband?" Arthur sputtered, his composure slipping. "Olivia, this is absurd. A desperate stunt. You don't have a husband." "Anthony Miller and I were married this weekend," Olivia said, calmly, sliding a certified copy of the marriage license across the polished table toward the chairman. "We have been seeing each other privately for nearly a year. Given my profile and the delicate nature of Anthony's family situation, we chose to keep our relationship out of the public eye. Anthony is an infrastructure manager right here at Stirling Cross. More importantly, he is a devoted father to my new stepdaughter, Lily." The board members eagerly passed the document around. The narrative Arthur had spent months building, the image of a lonely, spiraling, unstable heiress, shattered instantly. Here stood a woman, grounded by a wholesome, salt-of-the-earth family man. "This is a farce!" Arthur slammed his fist on the table. "You expect us to believe you secretly fell in love with a mid-level IT guy?" "I expect you to mind your tone, Arthur," Anthony interjected. His voice wasn't loud, but it possessed the rough, unyielding edge of a man who had spent years fighting for survival. He met Arthur's furious gaze without blinking. "My wife's personal life is not a commodity for your power plays." The chairman, a traditionalist named Richard, smiled approvingly at Anthony's protective stance. "Well, Olivia, this is certainly unexpected news, but joyous nonetheless. Congratulations." The emergency petition was instantly tabled. Olivia had won the battle. But as they walked out of the boardroom, Anthony caught the murderous glare in Arthur's eyes. The war had just begun. Over the next 2 weeks, the penthouse became a gilded fortress. Living with Olivia Stirling was like living with a hurricane, trapped behind glass. She was constantly on calls, pacing the hardwood floors, orchestrating the systematic dismantling of Arthur's power base within the company. Yet, the true shift happened in the quiet moments. Lily, completely unfazed by the billions of dollars surrounding her, treated the penthouse like a massive playground. One evening, Anthony came out of his guest bedroom to find Olivia sitting on the living room rug in her expensive silk pajamas. Lily was sitting across from her, carefully adjusting the external processor of her cochlear implant. Olivia was watching the little girl with a strange, unreadable expression. "Is it heavy?" Olivia asked quietly, gesturing to the device. Lily shook her head, smiling brightly. She raised her hands and signed, "It helps me hear the music." Anthony stepped forward to translate, but Olivia stopped him with a raised hand. Clumsily, but deliberately, Olivia raised her own hands. "What is your favorite music?" She signed back. Anthony froze. He stared at the ruthless CEO. "You know ASL?" "I learned the alphabet and basic conversational phrases this week," Olivia replied, not looking away from Lily. "If she is going to live in my house, she shouldn't have to rely on you to ask me for a glass of juice. It's inefficient." Despite her clinical phrasing, Anthony saw the soft, undeniable warmth in her eyes. The Ice Queen was thawing, and she didn't even realize it. But outside the penthouse walls, Arthur was circling. Unable to break Olivia in the boardroom, he turned his crosshairs onto the weakest link, Anthony. Paparazzi suddenly began swarming Lily's specialized school. Tabloid articles started appearing, questioning Anthony's financial history, painting him as a gold-digging opportunist who had trapped the sterling heiress. Arthur's private investigators were digging through Anthony's past, looking for a single unpaid parking ticket or a disgruntled ex to blow into a massive scandal. The pressure was suffocating, and Anthony was realizing that $5 million was hazard pay. The night before Olivia's 35th birthday, the exact moment the controlling shares would unlock, Sterling Cross hosted its annual charity gala at the Field Museum. Olivia worked the room in a stunning emerald gown, projecting the image of a perfectly grounded, happily married CEO. But the illusion fractured when Anthony's phone vibrated. An unknown number had texted a single chilling demand: "Lower server room, now, or your daughter's life gets very complicated." Slipping past Olivia's security detail, Anthony took the service elevator to the museum's basement. The lower server room was bathed in the harsh blue light of cooling racks. Stepping from the shadows was Arthur Kensington, holding a thick manila envelope. "You clean up nicely, Miller," Arthur sneered, "but you are entirely out of your depth." He tossed the envelope onto a humming server rack. "My investigators couldn't find any dirt in your past, but they found a wire transfer, $5 million, routed from a Sterling Cross discretionary fund into a Cayman account in your name, dated the morning of your little courthouse wedding. Embezzlement and fraud." Anthony's blood ran cold. He knew Olivia had paid him, but he had assumed the money was personal. If Arthur framed it as corporate embezzlement, the morality clause would trigger instantly. "Tomorrow morning I submit this to the SEC," Arthur said, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Olivia loses the company and goes to federal prison. You are named as a co-conspirator. And little Lily, she goes straight into state care." Arthur stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. "Unless you walk upstairs right now, take the microphone and tell the press Olivia forced you into a sham marriage because she's mentally unstable. You destroy her publicly, and I bury this wire transfer. You have 5 minutes." Arthur left Anthony standing in the chilling darkness. The weight of the ultimatum pressed on his chest. His daughter's safety was his entire world, but Olivia had fought for them. 10 minutes later, Anthony walked back into the glittering ballroom, his face pale. As he approached Olivia, Arthur suddenly intercepted them, a microphone in hand. Arthur had hijacked the orchestra's stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Arthur's voice boomed, silencing the crowd, "Anthony Miller has a few words he'd like to share. Something on his conscience." Olivia gripped Anthony's arm, realizing Arthur had cornered them. But Anthony gently squeezed her hand, walked up the steps, and took the microphone. He looked out at the sea of Chicago's elite, then locked eyes with Arthur. "Arthur is right," Anthony's voice echoed off the marble walls. "I do have something to share. For weeks, Arthur has been obsessed with my background as an IT manager. He thought I was just a naive guy who fixes routers. But when you manage the infrastructure, you see everything. Every shadow ledger, every hidden server." Arthur's smug smile faltered. Anthony reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a folded stack of printouts. "While Arthur was paying investigators to hunt for my parking tickets, I audited the company's internal network traffic, and I found the ghost servers Arthur built to siphon Sterling Cross assets into offshore shell corporations." The ballroom erupted into a frenzy of gasps and camera flashes. "He's lying!" Arthur shouted, his face turning crimson. "This man was paid $5 million from company funds to marry her." Olivia stepped onto the stage, her presence commanding absolute silence. She looked at Arthur with cold, calculated pity. "The discretionary fund you tracked, Arthur, was my personal trust dividend. It was legally routed through a corporate veil to maintain my privacy. You didn't find embezzlement. You found my wedding gift." Arthur stumbled backward, the color draining from his face. "And Anthony didn't just print those logs," Olivia added flawlessly. "5 minutes ago, an automated script forwarded the unencrypted ledgers to the SEC, the FBI, and the board of directors." As the distant wail of police sirens began to echo down the Chicago streets, Arthur dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor, a perfect echo of the broken glass that had started it all in the CEO's office. Hours later, the penthouse was quiet. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a heavy, honest exhaustion. Anthony stood on the balcony overlooking the lake. He heard the slide of the glass door as Olivia stepped out beside him, barefoot and unguarded. "You risked everything tonight," Olivia said softly. "Why didn't you just take his deal?" Anthony looked at her. "Because you learned sign language just to ask my daughter about her favorite music. A contract brought me here, Olivia. But I don't want to walk away." Olivia turned to him, the fierce, untouchable CEO, replaced by a woman who could finally breathe. "The shares unlocked at midnight. Arthur is in custody. The morality clause is obsolete." "So our year-long arrangement is void?" Anthony asked, his heart hammering. Olivia stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Completely. I suppose that means we'll just have to do this for real." Sometimes, the greatest risks aren't negotiated in boardrooms, but taken in the quiet moments of desperation. A shattered glass and a desperate contract brought two entirely different worlds colliding together. By risking everything to protect a little girl, a ruthless billionaire found her forgotten humanity, and a struggling father found his equal. Their billion-dollar lie became the most beautiful, undeniable truth they ever created.